So a lot of these questions I'm just asking all the musicians in this feature just to get
Mhm.
some perspectives. So some of this will help. Some of this is just to be interesting to listen to some musician stories. Some of it might actually help people who are starting bands or performing or just looking for something to launch off from in their performance career.
Sure.
So one of these is, can you describe the ideal bandmate?
Ooh, the ideal bandmate. Um, when I think of that, it's funny because I actually put talent further down the list of requirements. It's really somebody who is creative and driven, somebody who's willing to put the work in. You find all too often that as you're working with other people, that they don't do the work. It's just kind of like when you were in grade school and you had to do a group project, and usually there was one person who was doing it all, and everyone else just put their name on it.
Yep.
Bands are no different.
Yes.
And so, somebody who's driven and willing to like take on some load and creatively help what it is you're trying to accomplish. That's one of the first and foremost things. Also somebody who is reasonable, somebody you can actually work with in a reasonable fashion. And I mean by that, story wise, I was in a band once that I built, and we had only been together for about 2 weeks. And I was the only person who brought songs to the table, and I welcomed everyone to bring songs. And by the end of that 2 weeks, the bass player was already having a fit at rehearsal that I don't let him sing enough. It's like, well, how about you just bring a song, or maybe we could talk about it.
Yeah.
So being reasonable and being somebody who's kind of cool and comfortable to work with, and then talent.
Yes. Okay. So
Yes.
that's why actually I break this question up. So the ideal bandmate and the ideal musician are not always the same thing, obviously.
Yeah, absolutely.
So if we were just talking about just describe the ideal musician, what are some traits you might put in there?
Oh, well, see now, and again, like I think that is very open ended because it's situational. It depends on what it is you're trying to accomplish as an artist. If you are what are your talents, and what is it you need someone to complement? So maybe that's where I would go with that,
Yeah.
is figuring out what it is that you have, what it is you're trying to do, and somebody that can help to bring that to fruition, somebody who can really help realize that idea. So maybe you have a raw talent and you want somebody to help flesh out and compose the songs. Maybe you're a lead guitar player, but you're not a good singer, so you need somebody to really like bring your words and melodies to light. So it's really somebody that is going to complement your musical vision.
Right. Whatever project you recording or performance you're working on. Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's a point for musicians. It's not just your chops always. It's interacting with other people and developing those skills and working creatively with a group of people is a thing you want to be able to do. All right. These are some quick questions. What was the first concert you attended? When you
Quiet
had
Riot.
what was that?
Quiet Riot.
Quiet Riot.
They had this unknown band named Whitesnake opening up.
Yeah. Yep, that's a good one. I think my wife's was probably like Poison or something like that.
Awesome.
Around the same time.
Uh-huh.
Yep, I never saw. I don't think I ever saw Quiet Riot or Whitesnake, but I definitely listened to them for sure. All right, what was the last concert you attended?
Martin Sexton. Yeah.
Wasn't Whitesnake?
Shh.
Okay, so some of these you kind of already answered, but if we go back to how old were you when you started learning music? Like it must have been in school choir, or
Well, yeah. So I was in choir class from kindergarten on up, like straight through high school. And they taught music a little bit, but mostly I was just there singing. So I wouldn't actually say that I started getting a legitimate musical education until I was 16. And even then, it wasn't legitimate. I just got a guitar and started learning from friends and trying to figure out this thing called music. So, I mean, yeah, you could say that I had my foot in there um, since I was in grade school, but yeah, I didn't really start learning music until probably about 16.
Yeah, yeah. And I remember elementary and middle school music, even high school. I don't remember learning much. I mean, I just wasn't paying attention.
Hmm.
And it'd probably been nice if I had, because that would have helped later
Oh
on.
yeah.
But you know, kids are kids. This could be a longer answer, but it could be just, you could keep it short too. What is the biggest challenge, or some of the biggest challenges you faced navigating the music business? Like, what's one of
Oh.
the toughest things? Is it booking? Is it?
Um, I would probably say, I mean, yes, booking is hard, but really more than that, it's time management. Because everything that you do is a full-time job.
Yes.
You know, if you want to get into venues, you have to be relentless. But if you want to get into venues and perform, you also have to continue to rehearse.
Yes.
And if you're a creative person, you have to find time to be creative. And then there's things like, I don't know, cleaning your bathroom,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
do cooking dinner. So you really have probably the biggest challenge is time management, like making sure that you are setting time aside for all those things at the right times.
Right. Yeah. Keeping the practice and rehearsal in, and then you book all the gigs, and then you got to promote them too. So that's
Oh yeah,
a whole different aspect. Yeah, I
indeed.
agree. That is the biggest challenge, because it's open ended. You could work 24 hours a day if you want,
Hmm.
but you'd fry your brain.
But just like any business, and it is a small business. You know, it's you get out what you put in. So you had to put in there.
Yep. So, do you have any advice for novice performing musicians? It might be work on your time management.
Well, I guess it depends on what the question is. Meaning, like I guess I actually give a lot of advice to young musicians. I teach some lessons, and I just meet a lot of people. And when I see people with that that hunger, or even that idea that they might want to pursue the arts, uh, what I say is be realistic about what that means. Meaning that you absolutely 100% can make a life and make a living off of art, but you have to choose what's important to you. So if what you want is a Maserati and a big, 2-story house, and you want to go vacationing, you should pretty much throw that right out the window.
Yeah.
So like you could choose either that type of life and go into a career that is going to be much more lucrative all the time, or you can choose to follow your passion and be willing to accept that sometimes, especially in the early days, you might be eating a lot of peanut butter and ramen.
Yep.
you know
Yep.
but you can do it, but you have to be willing to sacrifice some of the ideal comforts and luxuries in order to make it happen, because this is, for most of us that do it, this is what our passion it is, and it's what we live for, and so we get our greatest joy from that, not from those other things.
Yep. And I would suggest, if you are interested in being a performing musician and you do want a Maserati, you should talk to Joe Walsh, because his goes 185. Right? 185?
I think so, yeah, and he's lost his license, so he can't drive, so it must
Yep.
be up for sale now.
Yep. Okay, we have just a couple more quick questions. Um, have you ever dealt with performance anxiety, being nervous before a show?
Oh yeah, all the time. As a matter of fact, I was a painfully shy kid And I had to overcome all of that in order to be a performer. Yes, I mean, I remember when I auditioned for my choir class, I hid behind a screen, behind a curtain on the stage. All my first shows, I was painfully nervous. And I actually nowadays, I kind of miss having that anxiety, because those butterflies really fuel your show. But even still to this day, depending on where the show is, who I'm playing for, I still get nervous before a show. Mm-hmm.
Yes, yeah, I certainly still do if it's a new situation, like
Mm-hmm.
yeah, new room, or I don't know quite what to expect.
Mm-hmm.
I get a little nervous still. Yep.
I'll be honest that actually sometimes still, even when I'm playing like a room that I've played 100 times, maybe it's just on background music in a restaurant. And when I think about the absurdity of me standing in the corner of a room just singing my guts out to a bunch of people eating dinner, it seems really bizarre, and I might get a little nervous at that moment again too.
I totally understand that one. Yes, yeah, it can feel pretty strange sometimes. If it feels like it's an inappropriate situation to play, but yet you're there.
Uh-huh.
Yep. Okay, what activities do you enjoy doing outside of music?
Drinking a lot. No, actually, I love movies. Nowadays we have them right in our living room and access to a bunch of them. So I love movies. I love spending time with my family. I get all the travel that I can stomach from being on the road playing, and I enjoy that too. So it's like I don't even like have a desperate need to travel. So I like being at home. I like working on my house. I like spending time with the family.
Yep, me too. Yep. Okay, one last question. This is a question that can go a million directions, because it probably does for you, depending on what artistic process you're working on. But can you explain, as far as your songwriting and recording, composing, some of your creative processes? Like, what people usually ask is, do you start with your lyrics first? Do you start with the chords first? And it's probably always different, right?
It is, but I have found over the years that even though I utilize a lot of the different techniques, which includes like I'll do what I call matchbook sessions, where it's like if I have all those scraps where like I used to actually write on matchbooks or napkins, you take that pile and try and find some inspiration or piece some of those things together. I've used things like that, but I found that fundamentally what happens for me is I either start with some chords that I found that I liked, or a melody that I liked, and I'll sit down with one or the other and then find the other. Meaning, if it was like a chord progression, I will start singing against it until I find at least a foundational melody that I like. And if it was a melody, I'll find chords that match it. From there, I let the song develop itself, and I will start to sing, and then phonetically, I'll find there's a word or a phrase that pops out in it based on the phonetics phonics that I'm using to sing against it. And then I let that inspire the next, and it cascades into the next. And sometimes that changes the melody, sometimes it changes the chords. But I tend to go to that inspirational, improvisational sort of method.
Right. Yep. This is Catherine by Adam Labeaux.
I like your radio voice there.
Crazy, but I'm just crazy, but Captain. You would miss me. you with a heat kind of lady. I don't know that you ain't crazy about it. A boy ain't crazy about shit, I'm crazy about. I'm just crazy about gambling. Sugar crazy, all I am crazy about sugar crazy, all I am crazy about sugar crazy about